Hi, everyone. I'm so glad you could join us for Digital Day, a full day of geeking out with PartySlate and our guests. I am so excited for our session right now with David Tutera. David, I think I met you through mutual friends, but I first attended one of your dinner parties during the pandemic. And I've always been a big fan of your TV shows. And I just loved how you pulled people into such a great experience when they were feeling isolated and alone, and everyone got dressed up and you were making drinks. And I just so appreciated that you did that during this time of isolation. It was great. Loved it. So today we're going to talk about brand strategy and building a lifestyle brand and extending that brand online through the digital space. And I think, David, you're the perfect speaker for this because you've really transcended your event planning and design business and done so many other things and created this community that's really powerful. So the agenda today is really talking about the elements of a brand strategy. And I'm excited to hear more about your perspective on that. That's the first and foremost thing you must do. What is a lifestyle brand? How you define a lifestyle brand, and then how you can amplify that lifestyle brand and really create, meaningful brand partnerships in doing so. And then I have a action plan. I always like to end with an action plan for those of you that want some help on brand strategy to really think through how to take your brand to the next level. So please ask questions along the way in the chat. David would love to know where you're calling in from. So please tell us where you're calling in from. We have over 1,000 registrations for Digital Day. Of course, not every session will have 1,000 people, but we're so happy to provide kind of this thought leadership and education to the industry as we are rebuilding and we are coming out strong on this other side of this pandemic. So David, thank you for joining us. And before we get started, tell us just really quickly how you ended up in this crazy events world and a little bit about your founding story.
Sure. First of all, thank you for having me. It's always an honor to be with PartySlate with you, Julie. I'm a big fan of the platform that you've built and the continuation of what you're striving for, which is education, knowledge, and direction, which is the one thing I didn't have when I started my career, which was an accidental scenario, although nothing is an accident. To give you the modified version, I was 19 years old and sort of lost where I thought I was going to be going. I was in Fordham University and thought I was going to go into law, but that certainly ended a short period of time into schooling. And I started doing singing telegrams for a company in Scarsdale, New York. And this woman, Emily, after about 6 months of me working for her as the delivery person dressed in costumes, holding balloons and singing a telegram, simply said, David, I'm headed off to Boca to retire. And would you like to buy my business? And she lived in Scarsdale. And I thought, this is an opportunity, yet an opportunity I'm not quite sure what to do with. I had to borrow money. I borrowed money from my grandfather and I started this little business. And 6 months into the business, it was going quite well. And I found a little teeny retail space in Larchmont, New York. For those of you that know Larchmont, it's just shy of New York City North. And on Palmer Avenue, I had this 600 square foot space and people would come in and order singing telegrams. But I got bored during the day and I started decorating the window to draw the attention of people standing in line at the movie theater that was right next to me. And that one Saturday morning, a woman came in, her name was Harriet. She was planning a bar mitzvah for her son, Seth. And I had no idea what a bar mitzvah was, but the one thing that she knew was she wanted her son's bar mitzvah to look like the window display I created to draw the attention in for people to buy singing telegrams.
I love that.
My message always has been that when something is approached upon you that you are unsure of and you're given an opportunity, you only have one answer, and the answer is yes. Saying no puts a wall up and doesn't give you the opportunity to step forward. I stepped forward into a business that I had no reason to understand, a business of putting celebrations, creating beauty, and making people happy and feel special. So that's how I started it, Julie. It's sort of like, in the right place at the right time, made the right decision at the right moment, and then followed through to really understand that there's something here that might be bigger than me for me to want to continue to do.
I love that. I've heard your founding story before. I didn't hear about that window display, and I really love that. So what was it, just, a beautiful kind of jaw-dropping display that drew people in, or what did it look like that caught her attention?
I will tell you, it was probably the ugliest thing I had ever done. And it's true. And I remember it.
I wish I had a picture of that, what it looked like.
Oh, I do too. I could probably recreate it. It was black ostrich plumes, silver like metallic sticks coming out of it.
Yeah.
And the tablecloth was a silver lame with black napkins. It was very 1980s, and which, by the way, it was the late 80s when this happened. And it drew her attention. But you know what was really interesting, I sometimes leave out in this story, is that when you're having an opportunity approach you, and you do say yes, as I said yes, that I share with everyone, I had to find out what this was, this celebration. And I only knew one person that celebrated her bar mitzvah in school with me. And I said, listen, you need to give me a crash course on not just Judaism, but what the details are of having a bar mitzvah. And let me tell you something, when you don't know something and you figure it out, it's a crash course on making it happen.
Yes, absolutely. So you leaned in, you learned, you did a great job. I'm assuming the referrals started coming in. And then, how did you go from there to these stunning, over the top, incredible New York, parties that you planned and designed?
Thank you. I was the bar mitzvah king for about 10 years of Westchester County. And it sort of just began shifting into the world of weddings, and it shifted into the higher echelon of socialites in New York City. Yeah. And I began to get what I call the creme de la creme of the clientele in our industry. And I was working for, billionaires' wives and being hired to do some of the most prestigious events based upon my reputation that slowly kept growing because I was young. I was the new kid on the block in comparison to all the very, very successful people far beyond success where I wasn't at the time. And I pushed hard. I strived hard. I made these people who want everything and anything because they can feel a little extra special because everyone yeses them to death, but I made it a little bit more emotional and connected to them, even though I had no reason to understand their world.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I think that, there's the relationship side and then there's the talent side. It's like you have to be able to do excellent work to get referrals, but then the relationship side is also an important piece of the puzzle. I always say the best, salespeople or relationship people have both IQ and EQ, meaning the intelligence and the talent, but also the emotion and the relationship side. And you really can't just be the guy that's like lunch and drinks and then not have the talent. You have to have both, but those two working together, it sounds like really helped you build your brand in this really hyper competitive industry.
Yeah. And that is true because, I'm sorry, go ahead, Julie.
I was just going to say, so I was just going to build off talking about branding, and I'm going to pull up my screen. I'm going to share my screen. I only have a few slides and I'll jump back to the conversation. But I know you have built such a strong brand, and we're going to talk a little bit about all the things you've done from that first bar bat mitzvah all the way to, all these TV shows and celebrity LA and New York events. But one thing I admire about the brand you've built is you have that foundational piece, the pieces put together. So you're very purpose driven. I've heard you speak before, your mission, what you do, why you do it. And that includes your mentoring and your educational piece, which is a growing piece of your business. As far as core values, I know at PartySlate, we really focus on not only living our core values, but rewarding people and recognizing. We have a core value award every month to employees that exemplify what we stand for and what we believe in. And then as far as, personality, I know Marcy Bloom is very sarcastic. I look at you as like the Oprah of our industry. You're so inspirational and helping people and hope and, things like that. But you want to know, what is that personality of your brand? And then positioning, how are you different? You don't want to be a Me Too brand. You want to really lean into what you're different and who you want to appeal to. And then, of course, some people think, your brand is your identity. I believe your identity is just a small piece of what your brand is. And you really want to know that your brand has consistency and how it feels and how it looks. And, PartySlate spends a ton of time on our brand and how we interact, whether it's our launch parties or our website. So do you want to talk a little bit about how you think about your brand and how you position yourself in the market?
Yeah, you have created a very solid, short, concise way of looking at a brand. And I think one of the first things I want to share is that most people can't explain what a brand is. It's really difficult. Yeah. They know the word brand, but they don't know how to apply it to themselves as an owner or as a business. And, creating that purpose, my purpose in not just having a brand currently. In the beginning stages, I wasn't looking to have a brand, but my purpose for what I was executing, which is celebrations, was to make people happy. The simplicity of what I did and still do to this moment is creating an environment that allows people to detach from their everyday lives and put themselves into my world that I've created for my client. Ultimately, the guest's a part of that. And you want people to feel as if they have literally stepped into a dream, a fantasy, an oasis, whatever you feel is right. And that's the messaging in the purpose of what I do each and every time, 30 plus years, making sure people leave feeling remarkable about themselves and not understanding why, but it's because what you create around you and for your client that gives you a purpose, and it gives us a purpose to build a business.
I love that. And I think it's even more relevant now over the last year,
Yes.
being a part. I mean, I can't wait to be together and celebrate. And I think this industry, I know it's going to be, painful ramping back up and getting staff back going in the hotels and everything else. But I do feel there's this new sense of, being together and getting through the hard times together, but also making sure we celebrate life's milestones, whether it's, a milestone birthday or a bat mitzvah or a wedding, but also even from a corporate perspective, celebrating employees, launching new brands, but being together, I think is, yes, I love virtual, but more important than ever is that physical connection. And again, making people happy. I love that.
Mm-hmm. It's true. It's the most important thing.
Yeah. So I'm gonna skip through this a little bit because I want to get into kind of what a lifestyle brand is. And there's a lot of discussion, like, is a lifestyle brand just a brand with a community? I define a lifestyle brand is that, really lifestyle brands allow you to kind of encompass your ideal version of you. And they give you a sense of belonging to a community that you admire or appreciate. And we're going to look at your profile later because I think you do a good job kind of amplifying the type of work and your personality on your PartySlate profile. But having recently spoke at your David Tutera experience in Orlando at the Four Seasons, which I have to say, the safety precautions, the details, everything this was my first kind of big event, after being vaccinated, on-site testing. I really admire that first event out of the pandemic that was done so well. But I really think this is a good example of building community, creating experiences. So tell me a little bit about how you came up with the concept to extend what you do into kind of this community that you've built.
Listening to our community, listening to the chaos and confusion, and this is far beyond COVID, so this has nothing to do with the current times. It had to do with everybody wanting to become an expert in our industry. And I'm grateful. I love the fact that there's this passion for it, but with passion has to come education. You can't just wake up one day and say, I want to be a party planner, or I want to be an event designer, or I want to be a photographer that shoots events. It's important that we treat our industry, and Julie, you help this industry so well with that. And the David Tutera experience was really birthed out of wanting to give people that are already in the industry better education on how to run a business and be successful. And that's where we are today. We are trying to lead our businesses and industry leaders to become more powerful, more stronger, more successful, and more financially secure. Too many times I've heard over the course of my entire career that they're in the business and no one's making money. There's no point to be doing something if you're not succeeding. Mm-hmm. And the David Tutera experience, as well as the mentorship program, all is based on solid education. Yeah. And I teach with talking about my failures, which equals successes. It isn't about my bragging rights of my clients. It's about all that we do to become better at what we are.
Yeah. And I love the session in Orlando that you did the Q&A with you and Joey, because every question that was asked, and it was kind of like a preview of kind of how the mentorship program, your 30 years of experience, as you said, and your failures, what you learned needs to be in the contract, what you learned, and, managing a difficult client and how to handle that. I really honestly feel that experience will shortcut so many people's mistakes and things that they're doing in their business to help them build a more solid foundation. So I just love being part of it. And again, I think things like this, yes, it's the 80 or 90 people in the room. I know you keep it smaller so you get personal relationships with everyone, which I think is amazing. But you also do a great job amplifying your content to the digital space. And I think what I like about your content is it feels approachable. It doesn't feel, oh, I can't touch David Tutera. Like that's, he's too out of my league. But like the dinner parties you did during the pandemic, amplifying the events at David Tutera Experience. And then of course, I have to say, working with you to create a kind of pop-up backyard wedding in the heat of the pandemic. This is when no one was doing anything. To surprise this frontline worker was just a highlight for me. I mean, literally had tears when they learned that they were going to get this wedding that they thought they weren't going to have because of COVID. I really feel like you're a piece of you and your brand is coming through in the digital space.
We try really hard for that to extend itself through the screen and through a box, and it's been working. And it's simply just because we're not trying to tell people what to do. We're telling people where they are at the moment and what needs to happen next. And Julie, and everyone that's watching right now, there's been such chaos and such confusion and lack of leadership, and just no one really, including ourselves. And we figured we need to step in and we need to create some form of leadership and some form of direction. I'm not saying that we or my team are right and accurate, but at least we're stepping forward. We all, every one of us, every day, we all have to step forward. And that's what's really important right now.
Your mindset of, service and happiness and all the things you do with your clients, you've extended to kind of the David Tutera Experience, your mentorship program, and your social media. So I think that's great. And then, of course, many people who I've talked to about their careers have this aspiration to elevate. And again, some people just love events 24/7 and that's their passion. And I love that. But there's other people that ask for advice on, how to create brand partnerships, how to become more of a lifestyle brand. And I know through we'll talk shortly about your reality TV and all the great amplifications there. But I know at PartySlate, we had a partnership with Vera Wing, in combination with an amazing event planner in New York, Miami, YSD Events. And it was just a transformational event that we did in New York that people still talk about today. It was definitely, it was a lot of time and effort on our part, but did a stunning fashion show with Vera Wang with a circular table in New York. It was a dream, really, to be honest. And then Crate and Barrel, we're excited to do some content partnerships with them. They love our real events. They love our focus on being the Vogue of event design, that we're singularly focused on, creating inspired experiences and getting people inspired on PartySlate. Tell us about how you think about brand partnerships and how kind of our, Macy's, One Hope. I know you're doing a lot with TV, which we'll talk about later. How have you thought about extending your personal brand and your name to, both monetize, but also, create more experiences for your community?
It's a hard question to answer, and one I love talking about, by the way. When we were first approached, I was approached to represent several brands, paid sponsorships, to be really upfront and honest, is, you can monetize your business or your name and your brand when you are either typically repped by an agency, which is what we are, is we're repped and you're brought in. I remember my first partnership was with Belvedere Vodka when they had just launched. And I became the face to Belvedere Vodka for 4 years, educating people not on Belvedere, but educating people how to create cocktails. Yeah. Big difference, by the way. So you have to be very careful when you're partnering with another brand that's going to possibly label you as someone that's, pushing something for the sake of bringing income in. I was still educating. I am always making sure that whatever we're connected to, we're educating on some level. In that world, it was making specialty drinks for people in the business, for people that were home. Like with Macy's, we have a relationship with them because they are now representing a new jewelry line that we're partnership with Macy's. And that's the building of the brand. It doesn't just pop up all one day. You have to create those layers to get the brand recognition. The David Tutera brand is known as a lifestyle brand. And then how it connects to the consumer. But most importantly, the consumer has to to be in the right demographic for the price point of what your brand is representing to mainstream. So not to confuse anyone listening right now, but there's the David Tutera brand that does high-end events.
Yes.
Those clientele are not going to walk into Macy's for a $40 necklace.
Right.
Then there's the aspirational consumer who wants to learn from what we do, can hire us as a company to do events, but will walk into Macy's to get a little bit of David Tutera branding, wearing that on their neck as a necklace. So there's two pockets, there's two very separate silos.
And how do you separate the two? So I think it's kind of tricky because you do have these high-end clients who are doing these events all over the world, and then you have your reality shows and your retail partnerships. What I'm hearing from you is it's kind of the aspiration of that lifestyle, and they know you through your shows, and they like you, and they like your personality. How do you separate those?
It was forced for me to separate and understand. When I had done my very first television show that became quite successful, my high-end clients, very high-end clients, dropped me like a hot potato because I was completely not attainable to them to give them all the attention that they feel that they deserve when they're spending an abundance of money on an event. So we lost all of that. And in return, we realized that the consumer watching my television show is a new consumer that may be wanting to hire us to do events. It's not the society, the socialites. It's those that have the funds and the money that may be coming from a different demographic. And it took us 5 years. We legitimately took us 5 years to figure out how to separate them, but how to make them work together. And we did. But TV could be the biggest blowing success, but it also could completely destroy you if you're not careful and understand what steps need to be made.
Yeah, that's a good segue to talking about media opportunities. And tell us a little bit about how you started with TV. I remember you mentioning kind of the morning show and the kind of like working your way in, and then all of a sudden you get into this crazy TV world where producers start to know you and come to you as an expert. How did that journey start? Because when I Google like David Tutera TV, like my screen blows up. Like there's so much content on you.
Well, thank you. It's probably the hardest work you can do in any industry is to do television. It all happened based upon my very first book I wrote. I wrote A Passion for Parties back in 2000. I think it was 2001. And one of the senior producers of The View on ABC called my office and said, "We'd love to have you come in because I'd like to pitch book stories, right? So we would love you to do a 5-minute live segment on The View." I'm like, I had never been on television. I have never done live TV. And I certainly can't imagine doing it with 5 lunatic women on The View. And like I said to my bar mitzvah client, I said yes to the producer and I showed up. I rehearsed and rehearsed and rehearsed. I did the appearance and I became a regular on The View because Barbara Walters and Bill Getty, the creators and executive producers of The View, saw something in me that I didn't know I had, which was connecting on camera to the viewers. And as a regular on that show for 5 years, they started to realize, oh, wait a minute, we need to build out a concept for David that we can create a television show, which ultimately became The Party Planner on the Discovery Network, which was my first show, which was 65 episodes out of the gate.
Wow.
And
that's very rare that you have 65 episodes, usually like, 6, and then it was canceled,
Yeah. Well, the truth of the story is real quickly is that they offered me 13 episodes. I was elated. And then Bill called me up and said, "I'm sorry to get the bad news. They don't want to do 13 episodes. They want to do 3 specials." I was deflated. I was upset. 2 days later, they called and they said, "We changed your mind. We want 65 episodes." I thought, oh my God, I don't know what I'm doing. I've not done this before.
Yeah. I love that. And I want to make sure people listening, again, if you guys have questions, feel free. I know we had a couple questions coming in earlier, that you wrote this book. And I know a lot of people have an aspiration to write books. And with self-publishing these days, it actually is a lot easier to write a book than you think. And I would not underestimate like how writing a book and being an author puts you in a new level of respect, right or wrong. I think that the fact that you're putting all your thoughts in a book kind of almost gives you that next level of authority when they introduce you as author of XYZ. Even if you sold 10 copies, it's like you're a published author. I think that fact that you wrote that book may have been kind of like an entree, it sounds like, into kind of the TV world.
It was the entree. I at the time I just come off of doing Joan London from Good Morning America's child's bat mitzvah. And I remember her talking on the side about all these books that she had been writing, based on cooking, by the way, which I thought was odd.
Yeah.
And she was becoming a number one top seller, New York Times author. And I thought, well, wait a minute, I need to write a book about what I do.
Yeah.
So I found an agent. I wrote a book. That was my calling card to being on The View, which ultimately I wrote 7 more books. I just am now completing my 8th book, which will be either self-published, which is definitely up for discussion, or it might be traditionally published through a publishing house. But the point is, you have to always stay relevant.
Yes.
You can't rely on your last gig being 7, 8, 10, 12 years ago to be a lifestyle brand. Back to your important topic of being a brand, you're only a brand if you're actually existing in the world of today. It's not who you were yesterday. They don't want to know who you are tomorrow. They want to know why you're so special and important and connect to consumers today based upon where you are and what you're doing.
I love it. And so you started getting on these morning shows. You got this first show that was successful. What led you to did you take some breaks in there? Was it full reality the whole time? Because how many shows have you had? I can't even keep track of how many shows.
A lot. So I could tell you hundreds of episodes. I mean, there was the Party Planner, there was Surprise Party, there was Celebrations, there was My Fair Wedding, which was probably the most memorable one for everyone that was watching. There was The Great Big Live Wedding, and there was several other shows in between. And I've been also on other people's shows.
You've been on other shows too. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and what has been the highlight for you? What do you think has helped you the most with the brand you've built or the exposure of your name? Which one do you think is?
I'll be super honest. Television is the catalyst to a brand. It's no shock there. You can ruin your brand. You can never come up with a brand if you're doing the wrong choices in the decisions made by producers or networks. You have to be very respectful of who you think you are and what the ultimate reaction or ultimate edit of the show will wind up being. You have to control some level of where they will make the show go.
Yeah.
Listen, it's a golden egg. Television is a golden egg. I mean, everybody wants to be on a show. A lot of people more now in the industry than before. I think it's great. If you think throwing an event for 1,000 people with an impossible budget in a short period of time is hard, step into the world of television. I'll tell you right now, it's 100 times harder.
Yeah. And you're like shooting late hours, and one scene can take, 100 takes, and then the editing comes in. It's a whole process. And even the reality shows, which do have a sense of some scripting too, there is a storyline that has to be captured. And so it sounds like exciting. I always say, I want to be on a reality show. I was on one episode of, okay, now I'm going to forget, Cake Hunters, and with PartySlate. And what I loved about Cake Hunters is it was a positive show. It wasn't like your cake is horrible. It was me as the client celebrating PartySlate's 2-year anniversary, getting to pick the cake that most met our vision. And, there was a big reveal. But I could imagine if it's one of those negative shows, again, there is a risk of harming your brand in doing reality.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
In fact, not harming it, you can be able not to start a brand.
Yes.
I mean, you cannot go back and erase anything that's been put out there. Always remember that.
It's there forever. So I'm going to, before I go to your profile page, I want to do a little bit of bragging. We have a little bit more time to take some questions that we got earlier for you. These are the steps I like to talk about for building a stronger brand. And I do encourage people to get a mentor, to have a personal board of directors if you can't afford to be in a mentor group like David has. Again, I think the groups are on the affordable side more so than an agency that has a big retainer every month. But I do think you have to document your brand strategy, and we will be sending to all Digital Day attendees a template that you can use. And again, you can even Google it. There's so many great free resources out there. But David, when we talked about your brand having a strong sense of purpose and written mission, your core values, you and your team and your clients understand, your sense of personality, your positioning, of course, your visual identity is very important. Sometimes I look at websites that I just, to be honest with people, I'm like, this is hurting your brand, not helping your brand. And other times I'm like, it's a great website, you just need a facelift. So thinking through what your visual identity is and how you present yourself is really important. So again, we have a template we can send you, but then also create a roadmap for your brand. Do you aspire to build a lifestyle brand like David has done? What would your community look like that you're trying to build? What partnerships would align with your brand? And then of course, in doing so, creating a really strong content strategy. So what are these 2 or 3 content areas that again, writing a book is, I will write a book one day. I don't know what it will be on, but it was someday on maybe Startup World. I don't know. But building authority, I think, is really important, and amplifying that content through social media and blogs and speaking engagements and press. That's how you start. Again, start small. Like maybe you want to be featured in a local blog. Maybe you'll get an article. PartySlate has a third of our traffic comes through our editorial section, our best of section. But what are you going to do to build authority and get your brand going on social media, on third-party platforms, your website, and of course, PR? This is kind of the game plan. But first and foremost, you must have a strong sense of your brand, even if you're a business of one, to really document what your brand strategy is about. So David, I think you guys have done such a great job, again, through the book, the TV, the experiences, the product. And also, I mentioned this before, just your family life and getting people to know who you are as a person. I think you do a really great job of doing that on social media.
Thank you. Yeah, everything you said, Julie, and everyone that's listening right now, it is so important to remember that every one of these steps, as small as they might appear to feel, to as large as the ones of being on, a nationally syndicated television show, all of the steps are building blocks to get your brand and build your business. Yeah. So a lot of people often will come to me and say, boom, how do I get into a television show? Well, there's steps before that.
Yes.
You have to prepare yourself. You have to, as Julie said, you have to be connected to people. There has to be an emotion that is expressed through the style of what you're producing and what your brand is going to become. And then once you've got a clarity of what your brand is, you can't start shifting it 1,000 different ways. Your brand has to stay consistent across the board from beginning to end.
Absolutely. And I think when we try to help people build their brand, and I look at some websites and they're maybe less than desirable, but people are doing refreshes and things like that. What we try to create on PartySlate is a place that really represents, we say your art, your talent is represented in your photos and your videos. So if you'll notice on PartySlate, we really try to be like a modern art museum where we kind of fade into the background, and really your work is the star of your profile page. But I know recently our product team launched the premium profile, which you get 5 cover photos. And again, your events are so stunning and so differentiated and so beautiful. And again, that's part of the brand that you've built. But also our editor, writes your brand story in the form of a testimonial, really explaining, leaning into, our perception of your brand and how great you are. And then we really like that you can have a spot for a video, like a welcome video, to just give people a sense of who you are. And then of course, the core of the profile page are all of your beautiful, beautiful photos. By the way, I love this garden rehearsal dinner. I want to have a party just like that. And again, also you'll see the credits that you have. Some people are crediting you, but your work is absolutely stunning. And this is a brand builder. I'd love to say PartySlate is the only part of your brand strategy. It's one important piece that goes along with your social media, your website, and of course, your real life brand that you represent yourself with. So you have over 24 events here, and then you have 6 videos. I just think it's really important way for people to get to know you. And then another brand builder is, of course, testimonials. All of your testimonials link directly back to the event that you produce. So we make it real, but you do get to control which ones you get to share, which I think is great. And then we say people buy from people. David, you are the face of the brand. And, the fact that you and Joey have such a great presence is amplified here. And again, we're not trying to replace the website, but when people come, we had over 800,000 people come to PartySlate last year. They're looking to get to know you. They're stalking you. They're researching you. What would it be like to work with you, and maybe answer some of their questions in advance, frequently asked questions. And then who do you work with? What venues? You work at the Plaza, the St. Regis. This is part of your brand. So we feel even the free profile, as much as I'd love to say everyone come on with premium, is a great way to build your brand. If you want to unlock some of those features, of course, you can go premium, and then even more so the white glove service, which of course will do all the hard work for you. So I just wanted to share that because I think that's an important element of the brand. And we did get some questions earlier. I know we have about 15 more minutes to go, but I wanted to ask you, David, in your 30 years of kind of building your brand and in your partnership with all the great partners that you've worked with, what are some of the core kind of milestones that you like thinking about your journey along the way? I know we know your window display, again, that was a big piece. What do you think some of those milestones or big accomplishments that help you get to where you are today?
There's so many different versions of a milestone for us. And for me, as growing a business, it definitely was the success of my first television show. We've talked about that. And it was definitely, being able to author multiple books, but it was also getting, for me, events that I never in a million years thought I would get, being hired. Maybe it was just 2.5, 3 years ago when I was hired to do a 2,500 person wedding in Indonesia, being flown to Africa to do, a massive celebration in Nigeria. Those things that I get hired now, I almost find them stunning to me. And it's not because I can't do it. It's because, and this is not done with, I don't want to be that braggart sort of standing on top of a soapbox, but when you're globally recognized, it's a very different thing when someone's calling me from New York City to say, can you do my wedding at the Plaza Hotel, which I can't wait to do. But when those moments happen, these global moments, it just refreshes and reminds you that I've worked so hard for so long that it's wonderful to be known in all parts of the globe.
Yes.
And it gets me very excited, and it re-energizes me to continue to want to do what I do.
I love that. And how do these people find you? So these, other countries, and, yes, you have your TV presence, but is it, we know we have global traffic from all over the world, but we're really focused on North America right now. We do want global domination one day, but how do people find you when there's someone from Africa or other countries reaching out to you?
I hate to give the same answer all the time. It's media. Media is the power behind any brand.
Yes.
We can have an old show that aired 15 years ago that's airing for the first time in a different part of the globe. Yes. And they'll watch a television show. For example, the wedding I got in Indonesia that 2.5 years ago, the father of the groom watched my television show and flew to Beverly Hills to meet me to see if I'd be the right person to do his child's 2,500 person wedding in Indonesia. And again, the media is the platform. The platform brings the success. The success comes from the branding, and it continues from there.
Absolutely. And I think as much as word of mouth is a big part of our business, you always want to augment word of mouth with these opportunities where people see you, they're Googling, they see you in an article, they see your TV show, like you said, different forms of media, and especially digital media, even TV is starting to be more YouTube-like, where it's on demand versus, the old days of channel surfing, so that people can lean in and find this content. So I think that's a great response, because the what's old, our next session that we're doing, we're going to talk a little bit about recreating content and how people can use content from the past to actually build your brand. And I always hear people say, like, oh, I don't have any events for the last year. I'm like, what about your last 10 years of these gorgeous events that are sitting in your Dropbox that you haven't used yet? Like, oh, well, people know it's old. Nobody knows it's old except for your inner circle. Your inner circle of like your 10 friendors, like, oh, I remember that 2 years ago. Nobody cares and nobody else knows. So on PartySlate profile, we always say the more content that reflects your brand, on your profile, the better. And you want all kinds of events. You want the beautiful, lush wedding, but you also want the simple outdoor elegant event, that dinner party. And so I think that's a really great point about content. To build a lifestyle brand or to build a strong brand, you have to have a lot of content. And I hate to overwhelm people, but it's never enough. Do not let fear stop you from creating content, because if you think it's not going to be good enough and not enough likes, you may miss an opportunity, like you just mentioned, by not sharing your content.
What Julie just said, everyone, if anything that you can remember right now, the most important thing is to please take your content and re-show it over and over. Mash it up, mix it around, put a new title to it. It's your content. You did this. You created it. You made it happen. Potential clients don't care when it happened. They just want to see the beauty of what you do.
They don't care. They don't care. And I always tell people, like, do you want to have an 80s event or your first bar mitzvah, out in Long Island or whatever? No, you probably don't want to have that content out there. But the last 10 years, I would even dare say 15 years, nobody knows when these events, nobody knows when they are. And some of our most saved events are events that happened years ago. It's still relevant. You're still creating content. The other thing we are going to talk about today, and we have been talking about a lot about, is search engine optimization. And that's really the place where people start. Yes, Instagram is important. We love Instagram. Trust me, it's the biggest source of traffic outside of Pinterest to PartySlate. But don't forget that you have to show up in the search engines, and therefore you have to have a lot of content that is relevant to what your targets are searching for, so you have a shot of showing up. So anyway, we had a question earlier, David, for you about what is next for David Tutera, and we're all coming out of this pandemic. What is next for you and your brand as you kind of look over the next, it's hard to even think beyond a year, but the next couple of years, what are your kind of priorities or the things that you're excited about?
We touched on it earlier today, but the continuation of education is very important to me. So we will continue to build the different platforms that we offer. And that is something that I know will never go away. It'll just increase, just to give to our community opportunities to expand their businesses. And for those that don't even know the industry, that want to step into it and become familiar with it. We're also just wanting to now begin unique programs in coming out of COVID, and still people being slightly, if not more, concerned about how do I create a celebration and make the right decisions for my guests. We're not there today. We're not there yet. 2022, I think, is going to be where we explode. But right now, we're working on a program which I can't divulge too much information, but it makes something easy for the consumer digitally that they're able to bring home to their environment to be able to make it happen for themselves. So we're always about solutions. So kind of what I'm talking about right now is education, solution, education together is what we know we can do, and nobody can control or stop us from doing that because of what's going on around us.
I love it. The other question we received earlier is and we talked a little bit about failures. What do you think is one or two kind of failures, and what did you learn from those failures?
I think, God, I've had so many failures.
We need another hour, right? I could tell you about PartySlate failures.
Probably, yeah. The first thing is the question you asked. If you're aware of the question of, are you aware of the failure? What was the failure? How can you learn? You've already started the process. Many people walk away from failure blaming someone else. And if you can claim the failure on yourself. That's my
dog. We'll keep going. I'm sorry.
That's what's important, is being aware that failures or struggles, I always say struggles equal successes. Failure can create fear, but the importance is that you get past it. Why did it happen? If you don't know, figure out potentially why it came upon you, and then move past it. Because everybody can get stuck in the moment and not step forward.
I agree. And I always say, kind of fail fast. I know that's a very startup kind of language, but without failing, you can't learn. And that means you're not pushing yourself to try new things. And so, again, even back to that fear of posting, if you post something that's not a big hit or whatever, that's just a learning experience. Number one, you can always take it down, but people will forget it like tomorrow. And number two, just lean into the ones that are successful, that you do get the engagement for. So I always say, if you're not failing, you're not pushing yourself out of your comfort zone. And so I really appreciate that. And I when I do speaking engagements, especially to founders in the tech world, I share that I hired an outside company to start. When I built the first version of PartySlate, it was just me. I had to throw the whole thing away. The whole thing had to be built over when my co-founder started. And so many other people came up to me like, oh, I was thinking about hiring someone to do it. And I'm like, you got to have tech internally. So that failure gave me that learning. And I have saved so many people money by sharing that failure. And I came to find out that many people go through that when they're starting a technology company. So I think it's really important that you lean into failure, that you learn fast, that you analyze it, don't try to push it aside, and then just move forward. So I really think that that's great advice, David. So we have about 5 more minutes. I did want to talk about our next session that is coming up. So David, if you can hang on with me for one more second as I share my screen. Our next section is secrets to getting published from platforms to PR, which is very relevant to what we just talked about on the importance of getting yourself out there and finding a way, even if it's a local morning show to a blog entry to a feature article on PartySlate. What is the way you get your content noticed? And without a full-time PR agency, it's very hard to have budgets for everything. How do you get yourself published? And then some of the tools I'd like to offer to everyone that has participated in Digital Day is, number one, we'd love to help you get started with a free PartySlate profile and get going and get familiar. I always say, try before you buy. If you want additional services, get to know us first. Number two, our team of digital marketers would be happy to do a quick brand assessment, look at your website, your Instagram, and others. And we love giving tough love because we think it helps the industry on what's working, what's not. I think most people are harder on themselves than you need to be because you have a great foundation. And then finally, we have a brand planning template. It is very simple. You don't have to be like a McKinsey consultant to understand how to use it, but something written down is so much more powerful than just in your head. I don't think you can build a brand without having intentionality about where you are and where you're going. So those are my last next steps and housekeeping for our next event. But David, I just wanted to thank you for being such a big supporter of PartySlate. I really love the brand that you've built. I love the community, what you stand for. And I know I joked about the Oprah, but Oprah is my ultimate. I'm like, how am I going to get on Oprah? I just love her. I love people that inspire and really drive people to be a better version of themselves and getting over the fear. And I've really seen how you've done that for so many people in the industry. So thank you. Congratulations on your success. And I know this year, like you said, will be a recovery year, but 2022 is going to be, I know, amazing for all of us.
It will. And Julia, as the accolades towards me, I want to say thank you for, and there's not enough of you. So there's the opportunity for people that are watching and listening right now to take advantage of PartySlate. And I say that in the kindest of ways. When she says she means it by looking at our website, she cares because she wants to see the success of this industry grow. If you have a terrible website, you need to know. And she's not going to say it's terrible. She's going to tell you what needs to be done to make it better. That's the difference. So trust in PartySlate. Julie has a great team. I'm always honored and grateful for being invited to speak on behalf of PartySlate and with Julie. She understands our industry. There's many people that are in this industry that don't understand who we are. So thank you, Julie, for doing what you do.
Thank you. And I always tell people, like sometimes when they're talking about like event things and load-ins and trusses and other things, I'm like, remember, I'm a search engine optimization person. Yes, I've hosted 50 events, but I don't have an event professional background. And that's why I admire so much, the creativity, the technical, the project management that it takes to create these large scale experiences. We are in awe of the work and that comes in every single day. We have, again, close to 1 million photos on PartySlate, and we just celebrate the creativity of this industry and all the leaders in the industry like you, David. And so thank you for your time. I'm excited for this full day of digital fun. And then we are going to end up, I love Clubhouse. We're going to end up on Clubhouse at the end of the day with all of our speakers to take questions and to engage with our community. So thank you, David, and we will be in touch soon. Appreciate your time.
You're welcome, Julie. Thank you.